On today's show, two up-and-coming actors who really have a chance to break through in Hollywood. We're not available, so instead we decided to have a raucous rumble of royalty who probably owns Rolls Royces. Tom Hanks versus Denzel Washington. More realistic than Batman v Superman. More last name diversity than Kramer versus Kramer. This is the battle we've wanted to see break out in the front row of the Oscars for 4 decades now. It's America's dad taking on America's thespian. Two of the most acclaimed, celebrated, and beloved performers in the history of telling stories. Neither is just an ordinary John Q, but only one will get the victory and truly be in a league of their own. Who writes this garbage? Oh, right.
Okay.
Here's how we'll determine a winner. Round 1, box office. Round 2, Tomatometer/audience score. Round 3, characters. And then we'll do a wild card round that usually helps settle the score, but in this case, it could just make the outcome murkier, and then the idiot writer of this show will have to determine a winner. And to be clear, the writer, right.
Why are you smiling?
Let's get it on.
King Kong ain't got shit on me!
Houston, we have a problem.
Round 1, box office. Times change, people change, hairstyles change, but regardless of constantly shifting cinematic trends, the two constants in Hollywood for over 40 years have been Denzel Washington and Tom Hanks putting butts in seats.
It's my job. It's my responsibility.
Comedy, action, romance, horror, sci-fi, drama, they have every section at Blockbuster covered, including new releases. But before they land on home video or Laserdisc, Hanks and Washington movies make quite a stir at the box office. Both stars had big breaks in TV early on in their career, and it was Washington's run on Saint Elsewhere that made him a household name. But once he leapt onto the big screen with 1990's Glory, he'd become one of the most sought-after leads in Hollywood history. His movies have amassed a domestic total of $3.92 billion, making for a per-film average of $85 million. And while Remember the Titans, Crimson Tide, and the endlessly rewatchable American Gangster all help pad those stats,
My man.
it's The Pelican Brief that gave him his biggest hit with a $214 million total in receipts. That's the first, but not last, Julia Roberts movie I will mention in today's virtual essay. Come on, she's America's sweetheart, so, you know.
Follow me.
Oh, and she's also worked with Tom Hanks in Charlie Wilson's War and Larry Crown. And while I'm sure moped gangs lined up around the block to see Larry's sweet ride, those two movies combined wouldn't make it onto the top 10 of one of the most profitable careers in talking picture history. Tom Hanks movies have raked in a total of $8.48 billion in domestic bucks, which gives him a per film average of $173 million. And if you're crying about a snake in your boot, let's see how Mr. S. Pumpkins does without those 4 behemoth Toy Story movies.
No.
$6.7 billion would be the total, with an average of $149 million. Is that good enough for you? And while Denzel has 2 flicks that piled over $200 million in cash, Tom has 5 movies that have each done at least $300 million, including Apollo 13, which I'm told is based on a true story, Saving Private Ryan, which felt like a true story, and Castaway, which I want to be my life story. Just me, and a volleyball, and blazing fires, and performing dental experiments. Tom Hanks' all-time highest-grossing movie is, of course, Forrest Gump, whose adventures made for a $737 million total. That buys a lot of shrimp.
Bubba Gump Shrimp. It's a household name.
But before I just hand this round over to Josh Baskin, I would like to note that Denzel had the higher degree of difficulty, as over half of his movies are rated R. Yeah, you're gonna need your parents' permission to see 62% of his films.
Oh, shit.
While less than a quarter of Hanks' movies feature that rating. Violence? Yes. Nudity? Yes. Adult situations? Okay, still not sure what that means.
I especially like that move in the 5th inning when you scratched your balls for an hour.
Well, anything worth doing is worth doing right.
And as I've had to say so often about my beloved NFL team, Washington puts up a fight, but ultimately comes up short. Tom Hanks gets the box office nod and wins round number 1 for a 1-0 lead.
Bullshit, you can all kiss my ass.
Yes, you're right.
Round 2, Tomatometer/audience score. Let's be honest, any one of us would pay money to see Denzel and Tom do just about anything. That includes collecting bones, battling volcanoes, or riding mopeds. I'm gonna do one of those jokes per round, so get used to it. But which star has a better track record when it comes to audiences leaving the theater? No, we're talking about you leave and then you talk about it with critics or your fellow audience members. The Tomatometer or Audience Score, it's going to be a fresh conversation, I'm willing to bet, because both of these guys have earned career fresh averages on both metrics over a course of a combined 96 films. Tom Hanks has the slight edge in Tomatometer average with 68% to Denzel Washington's 66%. But Mr. Shuttlesworth answers from way downtown with a 70% audience score average to Hanks' 66%. It's going to be a close race. So before we dive deep into each actor's top 10, let's remind ourselves that even all-time greats can make a few questionable decisions. For Tom Hanks, it made sense to star in a series of big-time movies based on Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code novel series. It just didn't play out all that well in the eyes of critics. The Robert Langdon trilogy averages just 28% on the Tomatometer, and I gotta think most of that was based on the haircut.
Anyone ever tell you look like a penis with a little hat on?
So let's stay rotten with Denzel, whose highlights on the wrong side of fresh include The Book of Eli. What? I like that movie. And Man on Fire. What? That movie slaps! Don't worry, M on F does have an 88% audience score. It's more like it. As far as the best of the best go, Tom Hanks would run away with this category if we count the Toy Story movies. The first two are literally at 100% on the Tomatometer. But even if we strike Buzz, Woody, and Forky from the record, it's Tom Hanks who still boasts 8 of the combined top 10 movies. For every glory or fences, there's a big Catch Me If You Can, or That Thing You Do right alongside it.
It's very important you don't stink today.
Hey, I make no guarantees.
But while the top 10 is important and that Pixar run has been nothing short of astounding, maybe it's a testament to Denzel Washington's ability that his more character-driven films can compete with the crowd pleasers that Hanks is best known for. Romantic comedies and animated flicks are great, yet Washington still has the slight advantage over Hanks in terms of audience score. Since I walk in both the Tomatometer and audience score worlds, around here they call me the Blade of Rotten Tomatoes. No one's ever called me that. I'm going to have to side with the measurement that gave Man on Fire its due, and in doing so, giving Denzel Washington the win in round number 2. It's all tied up at 1 apiece. This isn't falling with style, this is flying.
Either you're somebody or you're nobody.
Round 3, characters. Malcolm, Forrest, Alonzo, Sully. Yes, those are my drinking buddies, but they're also just a sample of the characters you know by first name alone. And that's in large part because of how well Denzel Washington and Tom Hanks played the roles. There's nothing these dudes can't pull off. Fantastical fictional heroes, real-life people, fake people, in real events. Tom and Denzel do it all. Each actor has 2 Oscars above one of their many fireplaces. Denzel struck first, earning his Best Supporting Actor statue as Private Trip in Glory. It's a transcendental performance that showed us the reaches and depths that Washington could go to.
I ain't fighting this war for you, sir.
And it was Denzel that supported Tom Hanks getting his first little gold guy in Philadelphia. And while Hanks is note perfect, Denzel is just as great.
With all due respect, Your Honor, we don't live in this courtroom, no, do we?
Hanks would go on to pull on the ultra-rare back-to-back, winning an Oscar the very next year for Greenbow, Alabama jogging enthusiast Forrest Gump.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates.
Denzel would match Tom's Oscar total when he won again in 2000 for Alonzo in Training Day.
You're in the office, baby. Going up.
Hanks has also received acclaim for roles as diverse as man-child Josh Baskin in Big and FedEx weight fluctuator Chuck Noland in Castaway. It's astounding how much range Tom is able to display while being so likable in virtually every film he's in. We'll buy him as a charming romantic lead opposite Meg Ryan in Sleepless in Seattle, or You've Got Mail, or the Volcano movie, but then we'll also root for him just as hard in harrowing thrillers like Captain Phillips and Saving Private Ryan.
When was the last time you felt good about anything?
Go watch Bridge of Spies from 2015, then remind yourself that Tom Hanks began his career as a fun comedy guy. He graduated from the sitcom Bosom Buddies to comedy hits like Bachelor Party, Splash, and The Money Pit. Oh, and fun fact, he co-starred with Sally Field in the classic-ish stand-up comedy movie Punchline. To prep for the role, he palled around New York City comedy clubs and started doing sets, impressing young comics like Chris Rock so much they swore he could have made a very successful career on stage. So on behalf of all other comedians, Tom, babe, thanks for sticking with acting. The rest of us need all the work we can get.
Wonder Woman flew an invisible jet. How did she find it?
Denzel Washington may not have the breadth of genre that Hanks does, but he more than makes up for it with some of the most powerful turns in cinematic history. 2 Oscar wins is great, but just consider how many more awards he easily could have garnered. His 1992 portrayal of Malcolm X is nothing short of jaw-dropping. Go ahead and keep those jaws on the floor when I tell you that he lost the Academy Award that year to Captain Hoo-ah! No one's ever going to say Al Pacino isn't a first ballot Hall of Famer, but come on!
No, I don't think I will.
Maybe I could give that snub a pass if Denzel wasn't also jobbed as Reuben Hurricane Carter in and out of the ring. That may have been Washington's best performance ever.
I served my time in a house of justice, and yet there's no justice for me.
Denzel's characters can be loved or feared, but always respected. Whether he's Coach Herman Boone in the inspiring Remember the Titans or drug kingpin Frank Lucas in American Gangster, he commands your attention at all times. And sometimes Washington is so good, we the audience aren't sure whether to root for him or not, hence his Oscar for Training Day.
So you entertain me with your bullshit.
But it's Tom Hanks who can light it up with so many different styles, and thus I feel his characterography? I invented a word! See that? Can we patent that? Make some, Hanks Denzel money? Is a bit more diverse. Plus, he went full Eddie Murphy and played like 6 people in Cloud Atlas. Sure, one of them sounded a bit too much like Jar Jar Binks, but hey, that's breadth, baby. Misa gives Tom Hanks the round, and he's up 2-1.
Gentlemen, it's been a privilege flying with you.
And now it's time for the wild card round. Iconic moments. When your acting career is defined by boffo box office, memorable characters, and you have a summer home on the fresh side of the Tomatometer, chances are you've given us some iconic moments over the years. For Denzel and Tom, these instances run the gamut, from just a tiny look to a climactic award show-friendly monologue. Tom Hanks certainly isn't the only star in Penny Marshall's classic sports film A League of Their Own, but he still manages to showcase his wide range of ability. He can knock a line like,
There's no crying! There's no crying in baseball!
out of the park, then make us howl with laughter when nature calls extensively in the locker room. But for me, the shining moment in that film is opposite Gina Davis when he reminds her just how special and yes, difficult baseball is.
If it wasn't hard, everyone would do it. The hard is what makes it great.
Washington can also inspire the masses, as few folks on earth could have pulled off the complexity of emotion embodied by Coach Herman Boone. He's at times affable and charming, and within the same scene, barely containing frustration boiling underneath the surface. But there's never a doubt as to who's in charge. There's also no doubt that I'm running 10 miles after watching his speech delivered to the high school football team at Gettysburg. Whew!
You take a lesson from the dead. If we don't come together right now on this hollow ground, we too will be destroyed.
And whereas Tom Hanks can jump from the dramatic to the comedic with ease, Denzel can give us a strong leader that's a hero or a villain. Just ask Bumpy how strong-arming Frank Lucas went for him. The breakfast diner scene in American Gangster was the setting for a 2-minute masterclass on how to exemplify everything about a character. Imagine going back to eating pancakes at that table.
So what was I saying?
The thing that impresses me most about Tom Hanks is the lengths he'll go to give us a moment as an audience, even at the expense of his own health. He lost and gained a ton of weight to make us believe he was a castaway, and it paid off for audiences as soon as we see that makeshift spear hit the fish, and then the new slim 4 years on an island Chuck reveals himself. And speaking of lengths one is willing to go, Forrest Gump ran all over the globe, then jogged America, all for our entertainment. And Josh Baskin gave us perhaps the most fun piano duet in movie history. Be honest, every time you see a big piano, you want to do it. For Denzel Washington, it's his duets with on-screen counterparts that have cemented his legacy. It's dazzling to watch him slowly reveal who he is to Ethan Hawke's unwitting cop in Training Day. And if you think the King Kong speech is brilliant, check out what he does as Malcolm X. The slave mind soliloquy is just as resonant today, almost 30 years after Spike Lee's joint was released in theaters. And just because you can usually find it on one of Ted Turner's channels on a Saturday afternoon, check out Crimson Tide again. Gene Hackman going toe-to-toe with Denzel Washington? Just another example of how Tony Scott spoiled us audiences time and time again. Thank you, Tony. You can't go wrong with either actor to win this round, but I'm leaning slightly towards the guy whose iconic moments tend to be more singular and powerful and, yes, memorable and make me work out more. I'm sorry, Woody, Turner, and Sully. Denzel wins this round. We're tied, and now we need to move on before I get emotional thinking about that Captain Phillips medical attention scene. My God.
Who's your daddy, Gary? Who's your daddy?
You.
All right, folks, here we are. It doesn't take a genius like Roman J. Israel Esquire to predict we could end in a tie and that the decision to declare a winner would fall into my barely capable elf hands. Here we are. Hanks versus Washington. Same amount of Oscars. It's a virtual dead heat according to critics and audiences, so the only way to determine a winner is stall for time. Not only are Tom and Denzel accomplished actors, directors, and producers, they're each responsible for ushering in new generations of greatness thanks to their generosity. Charlize Theron has attributed her entire career to Tom Hanks taking a chance on her when she was an unknown, giving her a role in That Thing You Do, and Chadwick Boseman was able to attend a summer intensive at Oxford thanks to a scholarship paid for by Denzel Washington. We audiences love these two men. So many current performers are forever in their debt. So now back to me, and let's take a look at them Oscar wins a little more closely. Each of their combined 4 wins was richly deserved, no doubt about it. But as the Academy sometimes might give an award as a makeup call for a previously questionable decision, perhaps I can use my platform to similarly right a wrong. Tom Hanks has earned his place atop Mount A-list by making us laugh, cry, and think with such a natural touch. And while he possibly could have won another Oscar for Castaway or Captain Phillips, it's the intensity, focus, and searing honesty we get from Denzel that, in my opinion, has gone overlooked too often. In no world should Hoo-Ah have defeated Malcolm X, and I could also argue that the hurricane and flight should have earned him more statues. As anyone who's ever stared at a hotel minibar will tell you, that scene in Flight resonates hard. So in what will go down in history as just as valuable as an Academy Award, I, Mark Ellis, hereby declare Denzel Washington the winner in today's gut-wrenching episode of Versus.
Make it rain.
And no, this isn't because of how Turner and Hooch ended, but that certainly didn't help. Tom. Look, Hanks is going to be okay. He's out there dating mermaids, flirting online, making mopeds just a tad bit cooler. And if I have to be on someone's bad side, I'd rather it be Mr. Rogers than John Creasy. But hey, that's just my opinion. Now, we turn it over to you, the world at large. Comment below and let us know which actor do you prefer, what's your favorite movie of either of their catalogs. Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure you hit that like button, click that notification bell, and remember, this was a very tough decision for me, but as a great hitter once said, the hard is what makes it great. I'm Mark Ellis, reminding you, never wear a fur coat to a prize fight.